This is a first for us. We're at the Garland County Historical Society, which many of you know is located on Quapaw Avenue in downtown Hot Springs. And with me is Executive Director Liz Robbins. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you, Terry. It's an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Now, the history of Hot Springs is something that touches every citizen. And every time we air something on government access that has to do with history, the phones ring and people respond. And I'll tell you, when I first moved from New Orleans to Hot Springs, the very first week I was here, someone took me to the archives and a whole new world opened up for me. This is an amazing place, and if you have not come down to visit it, you need to spend some time here and find out about the roots of Hot Springs.
Thank you for saying that, Terry. We have wonderful volunteers who work very hard to preserve our history and make it very accessible to people.
And that you do so well. And you're even in the digital age these days with equipment and gloves.
Digitizing everything in sight.
Fantastic. Well, today we're specifically going to be talking about government history. We're going to zero in on City Hall and its origins. So let's talk about that today. People don't realize that City Hall has a quite rich history. So where did we very first have a City Hall in Hot Springs?
Well, the very first City Hall was where the National Park headquarters building is today. This was in 1876 when we first formed our first city government. We already had about 2,500 people and wooden buildings on either side of dusty Central Avenue, which was called Valley Street back then. We had no police, we had no regulations about sanitation or trash or anything else. We desperately needed a city government, and they found their home at the City Hall there at the end of what's now Bathhouse Row. But in 1878, that site burned. It was rebuilt at the same place, and the fire department was there too. But then in 1883, the Hot Springs Reservation superintendent kicked the city out. They didn't want them in that building anymore. So the City Hall had to move, and it moved to, you can see on this map, to the corner of Court and Exchange Street. In the back half of the lot where the Bank of America building is now, it covered the back half of that lot. And it was there till 1896 when it moved down a block to the corner of Prospect and Exchange. And it was quite a splendid building. You can see it in this picture. It housed the fire department, and here you can see decorated fire wagons in front. And it also had the city jail. And the map shows a place for prisoners in it. So that was quite an impressive City Hall, but it moved again in 1904 to the corner of Convention Boulevard and Opera Street, which back then was Benton Street and Spring Street. Basically, it's where the Municipal Hall is today. It moved to that site in 1904. And you can see the new building there. And in the corner of this picture on the left, you can see the old post office building that's still there today. Today it's the home of Selected Funeral and Life Insurance Company. So the City Hall was to the right of that building.
So in the same footprint that it exists today was the City Hall at that time. And the beautiful post office, I think at one time, was owned by the city. Just not anymore.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so here we are now in the current area where City Hall exists today. But wasn't this building more than just a City Hall?
It was. It was a complex, really, that served several functions. In the main building that faced across what's now Convention Boulevard toward the railroad depot were the city offices. The city clerk was on the first floor, the mayor was on the second floor, and of course it housed the municipal court. And then to the right of that, around the corner of the whole complex, in the back was the police department and the jail, and you can see some policemen in 1904 lined up in front of the jail at the back of the building. You can see the bars on the windows.
What great old uniforms.
Oh, weren't they wonderful? The first city police uniforms were actually modeled on the New York City police uniforms.
I can see that.
But the main building to the right of the City Hall portion housed our fire department.
Oh.
And here's a picture of a couple of the fire vehicles in 1913. Now, it seems like that would have been a very handy location for the fire department when the big fire of 1913 started, because it was just a few blocks away from where that fire started on Church Street. Unfortunately, though, this fire department just wasn't able to put that fire out when it started, and it burned up 60 city blocks. And here's another picture of the fire department at City Hall in 1929. You can see we have many more vehicles, and their four gentlemen in suits represent a lot of the city government. The man on the left is City Clerk Fred Fowler, and next to him is Fire Chief Tate, and then next to him is Municipal Judge Vern Ledgerwood, and the one on the right is Mayor Leo McLaughlin.
Now that's a famous name indeed for Hot Springs history.
He was indeed famous. He was the mayor who served the longest at City Hall from 1927 to 1947. And the political machine he ran, along with Judge Ledgerwood, was very, very powerful. In fact, City Clerk Fred Fowler there found that out to his dismay. He was initially a supporter of McLaughlin, but then switched sides. McLaughlin was furious. So in 1929, a little after this picture was taken, there was a fire on the first floor of City Hall that damaged it badly, and it started in Fowler's clerk's office. Well, McLaughlin insisted that Fowler should be charged with arson, even though Fire Chief Tate couldn't declare that the fire was set intentionally, and even though Fowler could prove he was in Little Rock the night the fire started. McLaughlin had him charged with arson, and he had to go to trial. He was acquitted, but the fact that McLaughlin could force the trial and put a political enemy through that helped spread the word that you don't mess with Leo.
Fascinating story.
Yes. And he soon had Fowler fired. And here's the fire department. Oh, there's McLaughlin.
It's a great picture.
With his trademark red carnation. And here's the fire department in the 1950s. Same location with the big double doors.
Well, then what else was part of the City Hall complex?
Well, the steps going up on the side of the main city offices, you see those tall steps to the right of it? That led to a lobby to the City Auditorium Theater. That's the building behind it right here. They were connected.
Oh, I see. Okay, so what kind of things were shown in the auditorium?
Oh, wonderful live acts. Plays, speakers, musicians. Sarah Bernhardt, Cole Younger came after his outlaw days, telling all about what he and Jesse James had been up to. Lillian Russell and Madame Butterfly. And a grand production of Ben-Hur that featured 12 live horses on the stage. And during the big chariot race scene, they were all running on a treadmill, while behind them a moving screen showed pictures of the Colosseum, so it looked like they were racing around the Colosseum. So a lot of fascinating things were seen in the auditorium. And then starting in 1907, they started to show movies there, which was a big, big deal. Here's a picture of some of the firemen with a hose in front of a poster that shows W.D. Griffith's Orphan of the Storm in 1921 that was going to be in the auditorium.
And now wrestling was also a part of the auditorium?
Well, by 1928, the live shows had just died out. They just weren't part of the culture anymore because of radio and movies. So the auditorium turned to prize fights and wrestling matches, and they were very, very popular for a long time.
Well, then when did the city replace City Hall?
Well, this combination of the fire station and the city hall and the theater and the police department had been very effective, but its time eventually passed, and it was torn down in 1962. while it was being rebuilt, the city offices moved just where you said to the old post office building that the federal government had turned over to the city. You're a very good historian. And here's a picture of the new municipal building being built.
Oh my goodness.
And then it was completed and opened in 1967. And here's the mayor at the time, Dan Wolf, supervising the unloading of furniture
That does look
into the new
familiar.
building. Yes. And here was his office, which has a very 1960s modern look to it, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
And this is how the city council room, which was also the municipal court, looked when it first opened.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's now the board chambers at City Hall.
Yes. Very comfortable looking chairs, aren't they? Oh my goodness, those plastic chairs. And of course, this is what it looked like at night with the convention auditorium across the street. It had been completed 2 years before in 1965. So Hot Springs had a very new, modern look. And of course, here is how it looks today, and is now, of course, our operational center for the city board, the city manager, the planning department, the public information officer, and so many other city offices.
That is quite a walk through history, just focusing on City Hall from its very beginnings. Thank you so much for sharing these priceless photos and giving us a sort of a glimpse of what it was like in the old days and bringing us back up to the present.
Thank you
Really
for the
appreciate it.
opportunity, Terry. It's been a pleasure.
And you can see these pictures and so much more here at the archives.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're open at all weekdays until noon,
We're
aren't you?
open Monday through Friday, 8 to 12. People can also contact us on our website, garlandcountyhistoricalsociety.com.
Liz, thank you so much for bringing us this priceless history of City Hall today. And next week, we'll bring you more city news.